Welcome to All Things Social Security. Enjoy your video.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening. I am Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the attorney of Joy Disability. Okay, in response to some questions about transferability of skills, this used to be an area that completely befuddled so many of us back in the day because it's very nebulous. 20-something years later, it's less befuddling to me. But so let's get into it because I know people get confused by it. And we do have a bunch of videos on it, so I'll point you to those as well if you want to see a little bit more about it. Transferability of skills. So skills is basically it's knowledge of a work activity that requires, a bit of judgment, like a significant amount of judgment beyond just carrying out simple job duties. Skills that are acquired through the performance of a skilled or semi-skilled trade. So if you're in an unskilled job, you don't gain skills. And I know that can be a little befuddling again to some because there are unskilled jobs that you still have to learn. Yeah, it's just because it's considered that you can learn them in a number of days. I think it's like within 30 days you have that job down pat. It's considered unskilled. Okay, so again, skill is knowledge of a work activity that requires significant judgment beyond just carrying out simple duties. And it's acquired. You gained that skill from the performance of a skilled or semi-skilled job. You weren't born with it. You didn't learn it in school. Okay. Transferability. So these are just some terms you got to be familiar with. Skills are transferable when past relevant work, that's PRW, when those past relevant work skills can be used to meet the requirements of other skilled or semi-skilled work within the claimant's newly determined RFC, residual functional capacity. So basically, if the skills are transferable to another, the skills you gained are transferable to another skilled or semi-skilled job that is of an exertional level that you can do, then it's transferable. And that's when it becomes relevant in terms of, well, we know for the grids, for instance, but so there are some probative factors you can consider too. Transferability is most probably going to be found if the same or lesser degree of skill is required, same or similar tools and machines are used, and the same or similar raw materials, products, processes, or services are involved. So if you're going from one very similar thing to another, for instance, then it's likely going to be a transferable skill. Okay, my notes here, we talk about the grids, but I don't really want to go into that here. Although that's a lot of it. Okay. They talking about tasks versus skills. Routine duties, such as answering phones, filing paperwork, are not necessarily skills unless they involve significant judgment. And it is noted that courts frequently reverse when ALJs accept generalized descriptions without analysis. So if the person is literally filing paperwork in alphabetical order, that's, I guess, because it's so general and so simple, it's not considered a skill gained from the work that took, say, 30 or more days. Someone could say, hey, file these alphabetically, and most people are going to know how to do it. Or if not, they're going to learn in 15 minutes. Follow the alphabet. I'm not going to get it. Well, yeah, I'm not going to get into the SVP analysis because I think that would make this too long. But they're all these areas are related to transferable skills. SVP, which is a kind of like a DOT denominator, it goes up to, I believe, 8, and the lowest ones are the unskilled. Then there's some hanging in the middle that's semi-skilled, and then you got your skilled, which goes like 6, 7, 8. I think 5 is still semi-skilled. So remember, if your job that you had is deemed unskilled or has an SVP of 1 or 2, there is no transferable skills, period. We touch on composite jobs. That is where we talked about it recently. In fact, you're a event planner. So that says one thing, but in your job, you also had to do not just the planning, you had to stock the employees' room because it's a small company and everyone pulls their weight, and you have to keep the water bottles stocked and the copier stocked. And so you're doing kind of like a office helper role, which is a little more physical, perhaps. It's not just all this and networking. And you're also doing the more brainiac work of the event planning. So one might be unskilled and one is skilled. We were talking about composite jobs in terms of they can't really assign a DOT code to it because the DOT codes don't do that. They talk about one or the other. But if that past relevant work was a composite job and there is no DOT corresponding job to be found, skill transfer analysis could fail if the ALJ improperly segments the job. So that's an important thing to know. You kind of don't know it much until after the hearing. One thing that many will say one should do if it becomes relevant in the hearing is demand that the vocational expert that's testifying define each alleged skill. So when he's finding that a hypothetical person with the same, it's age, education, and experience is the one we're talking about. If he finds that person using that could do this other job that is also skilled or semi-skilled, you want him to say which of those skills from that prior work are you saying are transferable, and have him nail them down. At times, it might be appropriate to ask whether the identified skill requires independent judgment or is merely a routine execution without having to make a judgment. And again, as we described above, pin down the industry, the tools, and the processes for the minimal adjustment analysis, which might be something that's relevant for the 50 and older crowd, particularly the 55 and older crowd, and definitely the 60 and over crowd, where to say that someone could transfer those skills to a different job of a less exertion, minimum adjustment is the max that can be expected of them. And so that means that the tools better be the same. So get the VE to explain that new job he says the person could do. What are those tools? What are those processes? What industry is that in? And if any of them are not the same as the prior job, that might be a wedge to get in there about not being able to do transferable skills. Yeah, which kind of dovetails into if the new job suggested as a job the person could do is in a different industry altogether, or if he proposes job, say, is that in the same industry? Or is that would be a different industry, right? And see where that goes. Hopefully you have a feel for it by then. Also, if the VE discusses aptitudes, someone's aptitude for attention to detail or an aptitude for communication, that is not a skill. So if that is somehow what the VE identifying, maybe the judge said it that way, that would be something to object to as well, because that wouldn't be a skill and therefore it can't be a transferable skill. Okay, so going back to the question, and I will attach, well, either attach or I will link you up to in the comments other transferable skills assessment videos. The question originally was, do you have a video? And I do, of some examples, not sure there's examples, of transferable skills and what that actually means. I'm hoping that that explanation I just gave, this is Gregory, is helpful. So Gregory's 56 and a maintenance mechanic for 30 years. And it would be considered skilled. Indeed, it would. I think Gregory is wondering if the skills of a maintenance mechanic, and I'm thinking maintaining like big machinery, buses or machinery or heavy machinery, probably not passenger vehicles. Am I right, Gregory? I'm going to see if I can get the specifics on that job. Not sure if I can. And I will post it separately for you. My guess, I'm predicting that maintenance mechanic for 30 years, it has skills. But remember, I believe you are, well, you're 56. You're going to be proving that you can't do sedentary or light work. I'm sorry, that you can't do medium work, but you could do sedentary or light work or not. But even if you could, it's fine. Would the question is, would the skills from doing the maintenance on those machines transfer? And that's probably medium level work, right? Transfer to a whatever exertional level you're limited to. Is there a job in there that those mechanic skills would transfer to? I think it's unlikely. That's just my gut feeling. And because the exertional level is probably different, what you could still do is less than what you did. If you were doing medium level work, maybe now you're stuck with sedentary or light. If there are jobs that those skills would transfer to, because you're over 55, is it in the same industry? Would it be a very different industry, considering the exertional level is so different? It sounds like the tools would be different, machines would be different, the industry would be different. So if it's a different industry and or different tools and or different medium you're working with, the minimal adjustment concept rule would be argued. I would argue that in a brief. I wouldn't be doing that to the judge. Like, I mean, I might ask the VE that would, because you're going to bring out from the VE. That's a different industry, right? You're asking the questions to get the answers you want. You're not then shoving them down the vocational expert's mouth. You know what I mean? Once you get the answers you want, you're good. I mean, in closing, I suppose you could say, well, in closing, Judge, I just don't think there's a job that my skills as a mechanic would be able to transfer to that would be in the same kind of industry or using the same tools. And it would just be a very different kind of environment that I think would be really difficult for me to succeed at or learn or transfer, those skills and adapt them to the new industry. Something like that. Because I know a lot of you guys are pro se, so it's like, how does a pro se person ask things? Because they're talking about themselves. Whereas when we're doing it, so you have to just tweak it a little bit compared to the way we would ask. But anyway, if I find something direct, Gregory, I will try to find this post. If not, I'll just do a video on it, perhaps. But I'm going to look for your particular kind of job. It would be helpful if I knew exactly what industry you're in, but maybe not. Maintenance mechanic. All right. Transferable skills, big deal. They are a big deal, particularly when you're over 50. All right. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you Wednesday for live stream. We had a little blunder this a very recent one. Power went out. Then when it came back on, nothing was working right. So we ended it after like an hour and 15 minutes. Usually we go about 2.5. But anyway, we'll catch up next week. And of course, anybody can post a question in the comments, either under any video, even if it's unrelated, or in the general comment area, wherever that is. And I do get to them all, and I will respond accordingly. If it's possible to give a full response or one that's appropriate for everybody and a video might be appropriate, I might do that as well, kind of like I did here. All right. Have a good one, guys. Be safe. Oops. You think I'd figure this out? Whenever they change the layout, I'm like, how